we don't expand our imagination,
justification for being what you are.
And welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Bob Schieffer. Well, the midterm primary season comes to an end this week, and with big wins in Delaware and New Hampshire, everyone is talking about the Tea Party. Is it for real? How much strength does it have? The Democratic National Committee Chairman Tim Kaine is out with a new plan this week for the general election. We're going to hear from his spokesman. Then we'll take a look at the youth voter turnout in this off-year election with representatives from Vote Again 2010 and Facebook. And then our Kaylee Hartung will continue our series Unplugged Under 40. But first, to the National Journal's Jonathan Rauch and the Democratic National Committee's Harry Sevugan. Well, Harry, a lot of noise from the Tea Party. Is it good news for the Democrats or bad news? Good news for the Republicans? Bad news?
I think it's deeply distressing news for the Republican Party. They emerged from Tuesday's primaries deeply divided and with a slate of candidates that were deeply flawed. In Delaware, we have a candidate in Christine O'Donnell who's so far out of the mainstream that she believes that women in our service academies are a detriment to our military. In New York, the GOP standard bearer for the state believes that or wants to turn state prisons into dormitories for people on welfare. And even where the establishment candidates survived their primary by the skin of their teeth, as in New Hampshire and Kelly Ayotte, they've transformed themselves so radically that they're no longer recognizable.
Well, let's talk to Jonathan, because Jonathan, you kind of become the Tea Party expert for National Journal. That's your beat now. I think you wrote that they may be headless, but they're not necessarily mindless. What's your take on what happened?
Well, in the short term, political analysts that I've talked to tend to think the Tea Party is going to be good for Republicans in this cycle because it's going to drive more Republicans and conservative voters to the polls. But they're also pulling the party to the right, and the question is, does that make it harder for the party to win in 2012? A presidential year when the center is going to be very important.
Well, I mean, is it going to make it harder or easier for them to win in November? Because, I mean, you know, I'm old enough to remember 1964. Jack Kennedy beat the establishment candidate, just barely beat him, Richard Nixon, in 1960, and then we had the assassination. Johnson came along, passed the monumental civil rights legislation, and Republicans made no attempt to move to the center. They threw out all the centrists. They threw out all the people from the East Coast and picked a man that I thought was a very good man, Barry Goldwater, but someone who was far to the right of even most people in the Republican Party, and they lost in a landslide.
Well, we're all guessing here, and my guess is not as good as yours because you go back a lot longer than I do and know a good deal more. But remember, off-year elections are different. They're turnout-driven. A lot of people who are in the center and not that motivated stay home. So turnout matters more, which is why I tend to think this will still help Republicans. But it's a guessing game.
Well, what was the turnout? Because that's one of the things we haven't really talked about very much. Was big, small, medium?
You know, in some of these races, it was very large. But unfortunately, I'm not up on the details. Harry might know more about that.
What about that, Harry?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot of energy out there. But the important thing to remember is that Republicans aren't capturing this energy. This energy is going to Tea Party candidates, not necessarily to Republican candidates. The same could be said of money. And I think we'll see the same thing when we go into Election Day. On the right is deeply fractured right now. And we saw this with Congressman Castle being unwilling to endorse Christine O'Donnell in Delaware.
But, you know, the other party is Democrats are fractured, too, when you come right down to it. Because when you look at the CBS poll that came out this week, 57% said that Barack Obama does not have a plan to solve the country's problems. He has a 45% approval rating. Yeah, the poll shows people don't like Republicans very much. It also shows they just don't like Democrats very much. I mean, frankly, people are mad about everything. So I don't think you've got a free ride coming here.
Certainly not. I think when the economy's in the shape it's in, there's going to be some anxiety, and that's going to reflect in the polls. However, I will say there's a New York Times poll out just yesterday where Republicans had 20% approval. Elections are an exercise
That's our poll. Same poll.
Same poll.
But you are only at 30.
We're at 30, but listen, elections aren't exercises in isolation. They are relative exercises. We're going to be making a choice. And the deeply flawed candidates that the Republican Party has put forward is going to ensure that this isn't necessarily a referendum on the national mood as Republicans would want it, or some of these polling numbers reflect, but rather an individual choice between the candidates.
Jonathan, you've been following the Tea Party people very, very closely. What makes them tick? Because, as you said, they're headless. There is no leader here.
It's a swarm. It's a hive. It's almost, they call it open source politics. And it's hard to generalize because there's no leader, there's no single group. They see themselves as a network of individuals and activists. But one point that's very interesting and important, and the flip side of what you were just saying to Hari, is they don't regard themselves as loyal Republicans. They are very conservative, but they are happy to vote against Republicans because they think they're independents and that both parties have let them down. And that makes them a new kind of very volatile element in American politics because they don't have that partisan loyalty.
Somebody said to me yesterday, and I'm not even sure I agree with this, but they said the Tea Party philosophy, they're not so much interested in what happens next as in what's already happened. They don't care if the candidate they've nominated in Delaware is a weaker candidate than the guy they beat. They were just interested in beating him.
The biggest surprise in my deep dive in National Journal magazine into the Tea Party is that they don't fundamentally see themselves as a political movement about electing people and taking power. They see themselves as a social movement about re-educating the American public to make it more skeptical of big government. It's almost like consciousness raising, like a left-wing movement, and it's much less important to them who they elect and that they send the message about the dangers of big government.
So what's your message got to be, Hari, from here on in? Because clearly you've got a lot of disgruntled Democrats out there, as well as a lot of independents who voted for Barack Obama that sort of have left the party.
Certainly, look, I think the message out there is going to be, do we continue to move forward with democratic policies that are slowly getting us out of the ditch that Republicans put us in, or do we hand the keys back to Republicans who put us in the ditch to begin with? And I think when that choice is made, and when people look at the candidates before them, whether it's somebody that's going to continue to move forward, it's a part of the mainstream, or someone far outside of the mainstream who's talking about ideas and arguments that we resolved 30 years ago, the choice is going to be very clear. They're going to vote for the Democratic candidate.
But by 2012, you'll have been there 4 years. Is it going to work to say it's all the fault that was of the guy who was here 4 years ago?
And Bob, I think this is a very important point. This isn't about looking backwards. This is about looking forward and saying, do we want to go back to those policies that got us into this mess to begin with? Our message isn't, it was somebody else's fault. Our message is, let's not go back to the policies that put us here to begin with.
And Jonathan, where do you think the Tea Party will be in 2012?
Well, one question will be, will they still be here? Will they be active? They don't have a hierarchy, a structure. It's hard to maintain that. But I'm guessing that they will still be out there. They'll be like moveon.org. They'll be probably have more ability to project their views. Politically, I don't know which way they pull. That's a really hard call.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of you. This is going to be a very interesting political year. We hadn't seen one quite like this in a while, it seems to me. So thank you all both for coming. We're going to talk a little bit about the youth vote now, and I'm going to snap my fingers just like this. All right. We'll see what you can do with the snap of the fingers. We have reduced the median age of the panel here to about 40. Sara Haile-Mariam is here from the project Vote Again 210. And joining in the questioning here, Kaylee Hartung, our own Kaylee Hartung, who's been doing a lot of work on the youth vote this year. Kaylee, start us off here.
Okay, Sara, I want to ask you, I know Rock the Vote came out with a poll saying 77% of young people are planning to vote in the next election. What sort of challenges do you guys foresee with that?
So Vote Again 2010 is a coalition of over 30 youth organizations and media partners striving to increase youth turnout this fall. And we're operating under that assumption. Prior to the poll being released, we knew that young people do want to vote again in the midterm elections. Young people care about the issues, and yet our greatest challenge is drawing a correlation between the issues that they care about and the midterm elections. The Rock the Vote poll makes me incredibly optimistic that we'll be able to turn out young voters.
Have you gotten anybody to vote in the primary, or young people turn out for the primary because traditionally they don't?
Yeah. The primary turnout rates were definitely disappointing. Fundamentally, though, it's also not just something that youth organizations should be working on, but that candidates should be working on. Candidates aren't appealing directly to young voters, and it shows on primary day when they don't turn out. And so we're hoping through this campaign, Focus on the General Election, that we'll be able to inspire candidates to really reach out to our generation moving forward.
And part of this campaign is a viral video contest, right?
Exactly.
What sort of submissions have you seen? Anything promising that you think will really get young people engaged?
Yeah, we've seen quite a few submissions. A lot of them are just young people straight to camera explaining why they're voting again in 2010. And that's what the contest asks of them, either to discuss why you're voting again in 2010 or why young people should vote again in 2010. And so in addition to their submissions, we've also been creating submissions of our own to try and inspire people. We released one today that features Van Jones kind of giving us a rundown of what's occurred in terms of progress on clean energy and green jobs since the last election cycle.
Is that what we're looking at here?
Yes, this is the promo video. These are all, I didn't know them either initially, so it's okay if you don't. They're all YouTube celebrities, and they're encouraging young people to enter the contest. There's a $5,000 grand prize, and they have until October 19th to submit their videos.
And one video submission that you guys got was from, I don't know what the organization was, but it focused on Bieber fever and really utilizing his celebrity online to engage young voters. But there was a little bit of a strange reaction to it, right?
So I work for Campus Progress, and I'm responsible for the sudden wave of Bieber fever. Myself and Tara Cutts, who is our incredible video intern, came up with and executed this concept. And the video is satirical, but unfortunately, a great part of the blogosphere, and even Jay Leno, he mentioned on his show, took it literally. They really think that we're asking young people to vote for a 16-year-old Canadian. What the video is actually striving to do is to inject young people into the conversation around the midterm elections. It's satirical in nature, but at the same time, the underlying point is incredibly important. Young people need to vote in the midterm elections, and we have an obligation to encourage each other to do so.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. We appreciate it, and good luck on that.
Thank
and
you so much.
Maybe the guy will get a few votes.
Maybe. Well, you should vote for Bieber, Bob. That would be awesome.
All right. Well, we're going to turn to another part of the youth movement, as it were, and that is Kaylee Hartung has done. Kaylee, you have turned up some incredible young people since you started this Washington Unplugged Under 40. Everything from people who make cupcakes to the youngest member of Congress. And now I've got to say, you came up with an incredible group that you're profiling today.
So the guys we're going to meet today are the minds behind the trend-setting salad shop, Sweet Green, that really kicked off what we're seeing. A lot of these small shops make your own salads, make your own sandwiches all over Washington. Take a look and meet the guys behind Sweet Green.
We're more than just a restaurant. We're a lifestyle brand. We like to call it Sweet Life, and we like to have fun with it.
They were tired of the same old dining options in Georgetown. So their senior year of college, Nate, Jonathan, and Nick taught themselves a class in entrepreneurship.
And we wanted to build an environment where people could come, eat something healthy, enjoy a cool environment, and just, enjoy what they're eating and, appreciate the brand.
Everything you see, you touch, you feel here at Sweet Green, everything from the architecture to the uniforms to the music that's playing in the restaurants is a reflection of our personalities.
3 years later, they're opening the 6th Sweet Green.
And when we started this, it was 3 of us and we were everywhere and we could be everywhere, and that was great. But now you can't be everywhere. So right now we have about 200 people total.
200 people that are calling you guys the boss.
It's crazy, right? I don't know how that's possible, but they're the key to our business.
The average age on the Sweet Green corporate team is 27, and keeping that young staff happy is a top priority. That means yoga classes in the office and corporate outings, rock climbing.
Happy and creating like a fun place that people want to work, and people just like have fun being here. Yeah, exactly.
Right? There may soon be more opportunities to be a member of the Sweet Green team. They're aiming for 12 locations by 2012.
We're not Starbucks. We're not going to be on every corner. We'd like to go places where we can actually have an impact in the community.
This summer that meant Capitol Hill. Next week, Reston, Virginia.
So yeah, we're all foodies. I come from a restaurant background, but none of us are trained chefs, and it's, our concept isn't about being a chef-based concept.
The focus is on sustainable ingredients, local and organic.
This thing here called the Localist, we've added it to all the restaurants, and it's our way of communicating to the customers where the food's coming from. You're supporting the local community, you're giving your customers a fresher product, and it's just kind of cool to tie that connection to where your food comes from.
If you order the popular guacamole green salad, you can have tomatoes from a farm in Maryland and red onions grown in Virginia.
Our whole design, our approach to Sweetgreen is less is more. We want to keep it as simple as possible, but also as functional as possible so people can interact with the concept, interact with the brand, and feel comfortable.
Even where you least expect it.
They're embedded with wildflower seeds so that when you're done with them and you want to throw them away, instead you can plant them in the ground and they'll grow wildflowers from the menu.
It's that young and creative edge that may be their greatest asset and their greatest challenge.
You know, being the young guys in the game, you know, we have to constantly kind of prove ourselves. But I also think that's one of our competitive advantages is our age, is that we can, you know, use our age to leverage certain things to be more innovative, more creative, leaner, and I think it's a cool mixture of, you know, being in a small business environment but being so young.
Young or old, they have a business model that's working, and so much about that is their commitment to sustainability. Bob, in their Capitol Hill shop, the tables are made out of reclaimed wood from an old bowling alley. Their food packaging is compostable. I mean, they have thought about this from every angle.
It is just amazing. And to think that here are three guys in college and they say, why can't we find a good place to eat? Well, most guys that can't find a good place to eat just walk on down the block and look for a place. They start their own restaurant. And now how many of them?
Six
of them.
Opening next week, Reston, Virginia, next Friday.
Amazing story. Thanks a lot, Kaylee.
Thanks, Bob.
And thank you for watching Washington Unplugged. Join us here every day on CBSNews.com. I'll see you Sunday on Face the Nation when our guest will be, among others, Bill Clinton. I'm Bob Schieffer. Have a good